I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume, so I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. I am continuing my reading in the Gospels. We are right down to the end of Christ's mortal ministry. Not quite at the last week, but almost at the last week. We're very close. So, Christ is down in Judea. We have read a lot of his contending with the Jews. We've read the raising of Lazarus from the dead. And we've read a number of parables. We now pick this up in John. In this video, we have a Joseph Smith translation. Now, what the Joseph Smith translation is, this is a translation or correction done by Joseph Smith to restore those passages that have been lost or corrupted over the years. John chapter 11, verses 47 to 57. Then gathered the chief priests and Pharisees a council and said, "What do we? For this man doeth many miracles. If we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come and take away both our place and nation." And one of them, named Caiaphas, being the high priest that same year, said unto them, "Ye know nothing at all, nor consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation perish not. And this spake he not of himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus should die for that nation, and not for that nation only, but that also he should gather together in one the children of God that were scattered abroad. Then from that day forth they took counsel together for to put him to death. Jesus therefore walked no more openly among the Jews, but went thence unto a country near to the wilderness, into a city called Ephraim, and there continued with his disciples. And the Jews' Passover was nigh at hand, and many went out of the country up to Jerusalem before the Passover, to purify themselves. Then sought they for Jesus, and spake among themselves as they stood in the temple, "What think ye, that he will not come to the feast?" Now both the chief priests and the Pharisees had given a commandment that, if any man knew where he were, he should shew it, that they might take him. So this is interesting, that we now have a full conspiracy from the Jews to find and kill Christ. They've even made a proclamation, if you know where he is, tell us so that we can arrest him. But Caiaphas, the high priest, he's actually prophesying. This is it. I find this fascinating. Now, the reason they want to kill Christ is because what they're fearing is that too many people will start following him. He will create another movement within the Roman Empire, and the Romans will come, and in order to put down this new Christian cult, they'll destroy the entire nation of the Judea. That's what they're saying. That's what they're worried about. They're worrying about their own power and influence. The Romans are going to come and destroy us all. Now, Caiaphas, his prophecy is that you don't understand that Christ needs to die. He will die for the benefit of all mankind. I find it interesting that Caiaphas is the one that makes this prophecy. And this shows us that Caiaphas, he is the high priest. God still honors the priesthood of the Jews at this time. The high priest, he still had a true priesthood, and God honors it. But it will be done away with. We'll see that later as well. But I find it, even though Caiaphas is not joining Christ, he's not getting baptized by John the Baptist, he is not a disciple of Christ, he still prophesies of Christ. Let us look at the Joseph Smith translation here. We have three very simple ones. In verse 47, instead of "what do we," it is "what shall we do." In verse 56, instead of "what think ye, that he will not come to the feast," it is "what think ye of Jesus? Will he not come to the feast?" And then in 57, "if any man knew where he was, he should shew them." So minor grammatical corrections. Now, I did forget to mention that at the end of this, we do have Christ leaves, because again, it's not his time yet, and so he does not show himself openly in Jerusalem for a short period. This is in like the last month of his life, so it's not going to be long, but he leaves and he doesn't show himself openly in Jerusalem. So when people are coming down to the Passover, this is before the Passover starts, people are going down to ritually purify themselves to take part in the Passover feast. And they start questioning, Christ isn't here, and do you think he's going to come? Do you think he's going to miss this Passover? That is what people are wondering. Will Christ show up this time? Now, this video is a little shorter than I thought it would be, so I'm going to read a little bit in all three of the other Gospels that deals with this kind of conspiracy of the Jews. So let us first read in Matthew chapter 26, verses 1 through 5. And it came to pass, when Jesus had finished all these sayings, he said unto his disciples, Ye know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified. Then assembled together the chief priests and the scribes and the elders of the people unto the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and consulted that they might take Jesus by subtlety and kill him. But they said, Not on the feast day, lest there be an uproar among the people. So Jesus has already left. If we follow Matthew here, follow our timeline, Jesus has already left Jerusalem. And he's saying, in 2 days is the Passover. And when that happens, then I will be going down, I will be betrayed and be crucified. And when we get this description again of the Jews' conspiracy, the one thing that John didn't mention is that they don't want to arrest him on the feast day. Now the Passover had 2 feast days. You had the first feast day, and then 8 days later was the second feast. And so what they're saying is they don't want to arrest him on either of those 2 feasts, or either of those 2 days, because it would have been considered a great insult to the rest of the Jews. Now, let us look at the Joseph Smith translation here. Not much. In verse 3, we have add the and at the beginning there, so and then assembled together. And then at the end, instead of who was called Caiaphas, it is who is called Caiaphas. In 4, we have this addition to the end, so it's and kill him, that they might put an end to his work. So they're trying, like I said in John, they're trying to end his ministry. And then in verse 5, we have this addition at the end. So, lest there be an uproar among the people, let us not do it on the feast day. So just putting the feast day reference at the end instead of at the beginning. Minor corrections, minor clarifications, but nothing serious. So now, let us turn to Mark. Mark chapter 14, verses 1 and 2. After 2 days was the feast of the Passover and of unleavened bread, and the chief priests and the scribes sought how they might take him by craft and put him to death. But they said, Not on the feast day, lest there be an uproar of the people. So again, in perfect agreement with Matthew, 2 days before the Passover, and the Jews are making their conspiracy, but they don't want to arrest him on the feast day. Now it does call the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is the first feast of the Passover. So let us look at the Joseph Smith translation here. In verse 1, so instead of 2 days was the feast of Passover, it's 2 days was the Passover and the feast of unleavened bread. And then later on, instead of might take him, it is might take Jesus. And in verse 2, let's read this whole thing again. But they said among themselves, Let us not take him on the feast day, lest there be an uproar among the people. So just a minor clarification. Nothing serious. Now, that is the end. I actually made a mistake there. It's not in Luke. This is not mentioned in Luke as far as I can tell at this moment. So we're going to leave that here. And our next one will, again, be combined in these 3 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and John. So I will see you there.